What is up everybody, my name's Leaky Tatsman and this is the first in my mini-series of games that I feel deserve sequels. Now these aren't games that are necessarily going to get sequels, this isn't to debate the probability of these games coming out, these are games that maybe have gone slightly under the radar and in my opinion deserve to be continued, but for whatever reason they've either been put on ice or just not resurrected in any way. What I'll do is I'll keep the gameplay of one game in particular, and for each game that I'm describing I'll put an annotation in the video and it will open up a video in a new window so you can keep watching the video still, but you can also check out the game that I'm talking about so it gives you some context of what I'm actually describing. Now I asked you guys to vote for the first category, and although very few of you did, naughty, the general consensus was RPGs to begin with. The other ones I have are platformers, shooters, Wii U, arcade and miscellaneous. So if there's any preference on those, then comment on this video. But without further ado, these are the following games that I would love to see sequels for. I'll give a bit of a description about the game, why it warrants a sequel, and how likely a sequel could be. Now the first one has got to be Kingdom Hearts 3. Now I know the creator has gone on record saying that he wants to finish Final Fantasy Versus 13 before he starts Kingdom Hearts 3, but that game has been in limbo for like 6 years now. If you're going to release it, if not then just cancel it and put all the resources into Final Fantasy 15, but do not leave us hanging with Kingdom Hearts 3. To go a whole generation without bringing out a Kingdom Hearts game is absolutely criminal. For those of you living under a rock not knowing what Kingdom Hearts is, it's an action RPG that combines elements of Disney and Final Fantasy, and the games are absolutely superb. The main games, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, were a step up from the portable games like Kingdom Hearts 3D and Birth by Sleep, which were not bad games inherently, but they're not as good as the main iterations. So Kingdom Hearts 3 is a no-brainer for this video. Another RPG that I would love to see a sequel for, that I felt was criminally underrated, was Lost Odyssey. In my opinion, Lost Odyssey was the spiritual successor to Final Fantasy X on this generation, because Final Fantasy XIII sure as hell didn't live up to the Final Fantasy name, but I personally think Lost Odyssey was just as good. In essence, it was a real throwback to the old school RPGs with turn-based combat. It was all a bit slower, you focused on leveling up your guys and getting new equipment, and although it's one of these games that didn't necessarily reinvent the wheel with the genre, it did pretty much everything right, and the fact that it didn't sell so great leads me to believe that a sequel will probably never happen, but I can cling on to the hope and just encourage you guys to check out Lost Odyssey, because it is truly fantastic. Okay, another RPG that I would like to see a sequel for is Alpha Protocol. This game was an unpolished gem in many respects. It was absolutely infuriating because you knew the core of the game was incredibly good and yet it fell short in a lot of areas. It's an espionage RPG made by Obsidian. They made Fallout New Vegas, Knights of the Old Republic 2, so they've got some pedigree behind them. And Alpha Protocol, for all its faults, was an RPG that could say head and shoulders above pretty much every other RPG that all of your choices made a big difference, and they really did. They affected the story to the point where you could play through like 10 different times and have a completely different story. So the storytelling side of things was incredibly good. It just fell short in a lot of areas on gameplay, but this is another where a sequel probably isn't on the cards because I believe it was quite a money sink for Obsidian. But again, it's one that I'd love to see a sequel for, because if they work out the kinks on the technical and gameplay side of things, it could be such a fantastic game, because it was on the brink and it let itself down in a number of areas that it really shouldn't have. Okay, another role-playing game that I would like to see a sequel for, not necessarily a direct sequel, but another in the series, is the Chrono series. So Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross. These were RPGs on the SNES and the PS1 respectively. They were made by Squaresoft back when Squaresoft were all-conquering and just couldn't make a bad game. Similar in many respects to Final Fantasy, but a lot more varied in terms of storyline progression and the characters that you could use, and in many ways a lot better than Final Fantasy was. And I know it was rumoured last generation that they were going to make another game called Chrono Break, but that obviously never came to fruition. But it's a game that I'd love to see picked up at some point. The name might not carry as much weight as it did 10 or so years ago, but it's definitely one that I'd love to see another game for. Another superb RPG that definitely needs another game in the series is Dark Cloud. Dark Cloud 1 was a launch title on the PS2, at least I believe it was a launch title, I'm pretty sure it was. It played a lot like Zelda in many ways. It had this gameplay element where you could build your towns, and although the difficulty curve was pretty insane, the gameplay was solid, and then Dark Cloud 2 or Dark Chronicle just built upon that concept so much and was one of the best RPGs on PS2, the best for many people. And then the series just kind of stopped, and I don't know why. I don't really know the situation with the developers, to be honest, but Dark Chronicle was one of my favourite games. It featured in my top 25 games of all time video. Just really such a great series, and it seems a shame to just finish it at the second game, because I feel it has a lot more to offer, especially with the current technology. Now, another RPG that I feel could do with a sequel, and I know a lot of people are going to grimace at this one, and it'll probably be quite divisive, but Blue Dragon. For those of you that don't know, Blue Dragon was an exclusive JRPG for the Xbox 360, one of the first, if not the first actually. A lot of people didn't like it for the slow pace and the frankly annoying characters, which I'm not going to disagree with, they were annoying. But regardless of that, it was a game that I had a lot of fun with. The core gameplay was solid, the graphics were stunning, and for me weren't surpassed by any game for quite some time afterwards. It had some great music, a varied enemy set, which are staples for a good RPG. And similar to Alpha Protocol, I think with a sequel, if they can just work out some of the kinks, they've got the core concept done correctly. It was a sizable adventure, it was very long, and I'd personally love to see it brought back. Okay, another RPG I'd like to see get some kind of sequel is Jade Empire. This is a martial arts RPG. It was done by BioWare. Of course, they made Knights of the Old Republic, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, so you know they've got a hell of a lot of pedigree. I know Jade Empire wasn't necessarily considered as good as their core franchises, but it had a lot going for it in its own right. I know certain aspects let people down, especially regarding the length, but I think it would be a nice change of pace for BioWare to do Jade Empire 2, seeing as they've chopped and changed between Mass Effect and Dragon Age. It would be nice to see something a bit different out of the studio, especially with the sequels to Mass Effect and Dragon Age not really evolving the series as much as people would like. So Jade Empire is definitely one I'd love to see get a sequel. One more RPG that I'd like to see get a sequel or another in the series is Resonance of Fate. I think Resonance of Fate was a bit of a hidden gem, to be honest. Not many people knew of the game, but it's a JRPG at its core. It has a very different battle system to the likes of Final Fantasy and other JRPGs which you're used to. It has quite a high difficulty curve. It is a tough game, but very rewarding once you actually get to grips with the battle system. Then you realise just how deep it actually is. It had a lot of interesting gameplay elements to it. It kept a lot of the core principles alive that make a JRPG great, but it also added new things to the mix, which kind of gave a kick up the backside to old formulas which were maybe becoming quite stagnant. And I think it's a real shame that this game didn't get the acclaim that it deserves, because frankly, it deserves a lot of praise, a hell of a lot. So it's a game I feel definitely deserves a sequel, because really they didn't do much wrong, other than just not advertise it sufficiently, I guess, because it obviously didn't sell as well as it should have. And two more games to finish the video. This is probably getting quite long. Final Fantasy Tactics, I'd love to see a fully fledged sequel. I know we've had the handheld spin-offs, but as I say, a solid sequel that keeps that core gameplay that is just so damn good. Add new elements which we'd expect a modern game to have without ruining it. A brief description of Final Fantasy Tactics for those of you that don't know actually. It's more of a strategy RPG. You move players around on squares, different players do different attacks. You have classes, is a lot more in-depth than your average RPG, in the mould of games like Disgaea. But anyway, Final Fantasy Tactics is a game that I had a lot of fun with and lost a lot of hours to, so I'd love to see a bona fide sequel, even if it's just on Xbox Live Arcade and PSN, and give Square Enix something to do other than making a third Final Fantasy 13 game, which nobody asked for. And to cap off my list of RPGs that I think deserve sequels is Eternal Sonata. Many of you may be asking, what the hell is that game? Again, it's a JRPG. You probably figured out by now I love JRPGs. It's cel-shaded, it is one of the most beautiful games on the 360/PS3. The art style is terrific, the battle system was really engrossing, I thought it was great, a good mix of turn-based and real-time. I thought the storyline, as bizarre as it was actually quite gripping. Basically, you play the whole game inside of a dying composer's dream. So yeah, as messed up as that sounds, it was really a blast from start to finish, and I can't believe that more people aren't demanding a sequel to this game, because it was absolutely terrific. So there you have my list of RPGs that I think deserve sequels or should get sequels in the future. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. I'd rather it not go down the route of this game can't come out because this developer's gone under. I think it's quite boring to talk about that stuff. Just talk about the games that you'd like to see get sequels for in the RPG category. Tell me why. Tell me what you think of the ones that I suggested, whether you'd like to see a sequel for them. If not, then why not? As always, I like to get in quite an involved discussion with my subs. And also, you can cast a vote for the next section of this mini-series. I'll go over the choices again: platformers, shooters, Wii U, miscellaneous, and arcade. So a big thank you for watching. If you could like, that would be much appreciated. Thanks again. Goodbye.
Hi.